How schools are similar to prisons. A Foucauldian study, Michel Foucault's exploration of power, discipline, and surveillance, offers a profound lens through which we can analyze contemporary educational systems. In his works, especially Discipline and Punish and the History of Sexuality, Foucault dissects how modern institutions, including schools, subtly exercise control over individuals through mechanisms of power. Schools today bear striking similarities to prisons, particularly in the way they regulate behavior, monitor students, and shape their bodies and minds. This essay will delve into these comparisons, examining how the mechanisms of disciplinary power in schools reflect those of prisons, drawing heavily on Foucault's concepts like the panopticon, surveillance, normalisation, and examinations. Moreover, it will consider the few educational systems that challenge these prison-like practices, offering a counterpoint to the prevailing norms. 1. Foucault's concept of discipline and the panopticon. Schools as institutions of surveillance in Discipline and Punish. Foucault explores how Western societies shifted from overt, physical forms of punishment, such as public executions or flogging, to more subtle forms of control that regulate the mind and body. He argues that modern institutions apply a form of disciplinary power that aims to mold individuals into docile, obedient subjects. One of the key features of disciplinary power, as outlined by Foucault, is the creation of systems of surveillance and self-regulation. The panopticon, the blueprint for surveillance. A central metaphor in Foucault's analysis is the panopticon, a prison design by philosopher Jeremy Bentham, which features a central observation tower from which a single guard can monitor all prisoners without them knowing whether or not they are being observed. The constant uncertainty leads to self-regulation, as prisoners must assume they are always being watched. Foucault uses this concept to explain how modern institutions, particularly schools, work in similar ways. How the panopticon plays out in schools. Architecture and layout. Many schools are designed in ways that facilitate surveillance. Classrooms are often organized in rows facing the teacher, creating a setup in which the teacher can easily see all students. Similarly, hallways and common areas in schools are often under constant surveillance by security cameras, creating an environment where students must constantly adjust their behavior because they can never be sure if they are being watched. Surveillance by teachers and peers. Teachers occupy the role of the central observer in Foucault's model. They have the power to watch and control students' behavior, shaping their actions and interactions in the classroom. Students, like prisoners in the panopticon, are often aware of the potential for surveillance, whether it's from a teacher, a camera, or even peers, and adjust their behavior accordingly. This system creates a self-regulating environment where students internalize the need to be good or obedient, even when they are not actively being watched. Self-surveillance. Foucault's notion of self-regulation is deeply embedded in the school system. Students internalize the norms and expectations of their educational environment. The constant observation they face, through physical presence or technological means, leads them to regulate their own behavior. This form of power is not overt but embedded in the way schools operate. Students adjust their behavior and even attitudes based on the fear or expectation of being observed. 2. The role of time, routine, and scheduling. Structuring behavior and movement. Foucault's analysis of the regulation of time and routine is another way to understand how schools function similarly to prisons. In both prisons and schools, the regulation of time becomes an essential mechanism for controlling and disciplining individuals. Regulating time in schools. In prisons, time is strictly controlled. Every activity, from meals to work to recreation, is scheduled and regimented. This system ensures that there is no free time, that the prisoner's body is always engaged in productive or controlled activities. Similarly, schools regiment students' time with strict schedules and time limits that dictate when they can eat, study, play, or even socialize. The bell ringing at the start of each class and recess session, the timing of tests, and the duration of lunch periods all mirror the highly controlled time schedules of prisons. The school bell as a disciplinary tool. The school bell, much like the prison bell, signals a shift in activity and demands students' compliance. This constant time discipline not only organizes students' daily routines but also reinforces the disciplinary power that shapes their experiences. Just as prisoners are given a set routine to follow throughout the day, students' lives in school are structured by an external authority, the administration, teachers, or the institutional system, that dictates when they must be in class, when they must be studying, and when they can break from these activities. Breaks and recess, even playtime in schools, akin to prison recreation, is controlled. Students have limited freedom during recess and are often monitored to ensure they are playing within the boundaries of acceptable behavior. In many modern schools, students are not free to roam the schoolyard or socialize as they wish. They are constantly reminded of the need to conform to social norms or institutional expectations, whether that means engaging in appropriate play or following strict behavioral guidelines. 3. The cultivation of self-regulation, normalisation and the use of examinations. One of Foucault's most significant contributions to the study of power is his notion of normalisation, the process by which institutions create standards of behaviour, knowledge, and values. These standards are not imposed through violent means but through subtle, almost invisible mechanisms like tests, grades, and social expectations. Examinations and grades as tools of power. Examinations, grades, and assessments in schools serve a disciplinary function that shapes the behavior of students. Just as punishments and rewards were used in prisons to shape behavior, grades and test results serve a similar function in schools. Foucault argues that examinations are mechanisms of surveillance and normalization because they continuously measure and categorize students based on their academic performance. Normalization of behavior. Foucault argues that disciplines like medicine or psychology work to define what is normal or abnormal in society. Similarly, schools function as institutions that classify and categorize students based on their academic and behavioral performance. The results of standardized tests, such as the SAT, ACT, or A-levels, can label students as smart or dumb, with lasting consequences on their futures. Self-regulation through grades. Students are taught to internalize the importance of grades, and their performance on exams becomes a measure of their worth. This type of self-surveillance is reinforced by the idea that grades reflect ability. In turn, students may begin to regulate their behavior and learning in order to meet the expectations set by the institution, resulting in a system of constant self-discipline. The examination becomes a tool of normalization, ensuring that students conform to academic and behavioral standards. 4. Surveillance technologies and biopower. The extension of power into bodies and minds. Foucault's work on biopower and the extension of surveillance technologies plays a crucial role in understanding the increasing prison-like characteristics of schools. Biopower, according to Foucault, refers to the ways in which the state and other institutions regulate life, from birth to death, through policies and practices that shape individuals' bodies and behaviors. The role of surveillance technologies. In recent years, the rise of surveillance technologies in schools has intensified the parallels with prisons. CCTV cameras, RFID tags, biometric scanners, and even AI-driven surveillance systems are increasingly being used to monitor students' behavior, movements, and even emotions. These technologies serve not only to monitor student actions but also to shape how students interact with the institution. Example of biometric tracking. Some schools use biometric systems to monitor student attendance, track movements in and out of classrooms, or even identify students through fingerprint scanning. In some places, students' eye movements or face recognition are used to assess attention or engagement during lessons. These systems reflect Foucault's argument about how modern institutions extend their control beyond direct interaction and into the realm of biopolitics, where students' very bodies are surveilled and controlled. Example of security measures. In countries like the US, schools have implemented metal detectors, random drug tests, and pat-down searches,